Welcome back to the Big Lab podcast. It's just me today, a solo episode. And honestly, I've been looking forward to this one because this is one of those topics that hits close to home, something I've personally wrestled with, and I think most people have, whether they realize it or not. We're talking about self-sabotage, that strange moment when everything seems to be going well and somehow you become the obstacle. You start pulling back, overthinking, making excuses and losing focus. It's almost like there's a hidden version of you quietly working against your own progress. And the wild part is, it makes sense, at least to your subconscious it does. So in this episode, I want to break that down, not just from the angle of psychology, the science of how we think and behave, but also from philosophy, the wisdom of why we act the way we do, and how ancient thinkers already understood this long before neuroscience existed. Because when you mix modern research with Stoic insight, you start to see a pattern, a way of understanding self-sabotage that isn't about blame, but about awareness. We've all been there. Maybe you finally start that project, and just when you get a momentum, you stop showing up. Or you meet someone amazing, things are going well, and then you push them away. Or maybe success comes knocking, and you suddenly find 10 reasons why now's not the right time. That's the quiet pattern called self-sabotage. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's subtle, logical on the surface, and usually invisible until you zoom out and notice the trail of almosts behind you. Psychologists describe self-sabotage as any behaviour that undermines our long-term goals while serving a short-term emotional need. In plain English, it's choosing comfort over growth, safety over possibility, relief over reward. And here's the key, it's almost never conscious. You don't wake up thinking, I'm going to ruin my own progress today. It happens quietly, as your mind tries to protect you from something that doesn't fully understand. Author Gay Hendricks calls this the upper limit problem, the idea that each of us carries an internal thermostat of how much success, love, or happiness we believe we're allowed to experience. The moment we go above that limit, we find a way, consciously or not, to pull ourselves back down. The mind whispers, careful, this is too good, something's bound to go wrong. So we act out the prophecy ourselves. And this isn't a new discovery. 2,000 years ago, Seneca said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the obstacle to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. They were describing the same inner conflict, the battle between the part of us that wants to grow and the part of us that wants to stay safe. So what's actually happening inside of us when we self-sabotage? It's a conflict between two selves, one that dreams and desires more, and another that fears what more might cost. Neither is wrong, both are trying to protect us, but when fear wins too often, life starts to shrink to fit the size of our comfort zone. Every meaningful leap you've ever taken started with uncertainty, and uncertainty feels dangerous to the brain, because in evolutionary terms, change used to mean risk. So the body developed alarms, anxiety, hesitation, doubt to keep us safe. The problem is in modern life, those same alarms don't protect us from danger anymore. They protect us from growth. That's why when we're on the edge of transformation, a new job, a relationship, creative pursuit, our subconscious often interprets that excitement as a threat. It floods us with protective thoughts. What if I fail? What will people think? Maybe I'm not ready. But here's the truth. Self-sabotage isn't self-hatred. It's self-protection misapplied. It's the brain trying to keep you safe by keeping you small. And that's what we're going to explore today. Why we do it, what's happening in the brain when we do, and how we can step out of that loop using practical tools and timeless wisdom. Because as Viktor Frankl once said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That's exactly where we're heading. Now that we've framed self-sabotage, the question becomes, why do we do it? Because here's the thing, nobody wakes up saying, I'm going to block my own success today. Self-sabotage is rarely conscious. It's not a choice in the moment. It's a reaction, a pattern wired into the way we think, feel, and protect ourselves. At the root of most self-sabotage is fear. Not just the fear of failure, though that's part of it. Fear of success, fear of change, fear of judgment. These are deeper, more insidious forms. Success changes your identity. It forces you to confront what you could be. And the subconscious mind often prefers the familiar version of you, even if it's smaller, less ambitious, less fulfilled. It shows up in many ways. Picking fights in relationships, procrastinating on big opportunities, losing focus right when things are going well. It's not weakness, it's the body protecting you from something unfamiliar. Self-sabotage is often rooted in identity conflict. There's a part of you that wants to grow, and a part of you that wants to cling on to old beliefs about yourself. Imposter syndrome is a perfect example. Even when the evidence says you're capable, the inner narrative whispers, you're not ready, you don't belong here. Perfectionism works the same way. If I can't make it perfect, I won't try at all. Both are strategies to avoid facing the discomfort of being someone new. As Epictetus said, it is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. The mind isn't scared of success itself. It's scared of what success implies about who you have to become. Here's an angle most people miss. Self-sabotage actually gives us emotional rewards. Procrastination gives us temporary relief from fear. Overthinking creates a sense of control. Criticism of self or others shields us from potential disappointment. Every self-sabotaging behaviour serves a purpose, even if it's misaligned. Your brain isn't being cruel, it's being pragmatic in the only way it knows how. Much of this pattern comes from early experience. Attachment theory explains a lot. Children who experience inconsistent care may learn to doubt their own competence. Criticism or high parental expectations can lead to perfectionism or self-handicapping. These patterns don't vanish in adulthood. They simply evolve into adult sabotage, procrastination, avoidance, or overthinking whenever growth triggers the same ancient anxiety. Let's make this concrete. You finally start that project you've been dreaming of, and just when momentum builds, you stop showing up. You enter a relationship, things are going well, and suddenly you pull away. You get a promotion offer, and instead of celebrating, you find reasons it might not be right. This isn't laziness or lack of ambition. It's an emotional defense mechanism responding to perceived threats. James Clear puts it well. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Self-sabotage happens when our emotional systems are unprepared for change. Stoicism offers an interesting lens. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The obstacle, your inner fear, your procrastination, your doubt, isn't just something to fight. It's a signal, a teacher, a chance to see exactly where your mind resists growth. Seneca put it another way. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Much of self-sabotage is our mind projecting risk and danger where none exists. It's the fear of discomfort disguised as logic. Think of it like a security system gone rogue. Its purpose is to protect you, but when it misinterprets growth as danger, it locks you in the very place you want to leave. And understanding that is key. You're not broken, you're adaptive, just in the wrong direction. So why do we sabotage ourselves? Fear. Fear of failure, success, or change. Identity conflict, we cling to familiar selves. Emotional payoffs, short-term comfort feels safer than long-term reward. Conditioning, patterns learned in early life. Misapplied protection, the mind trying to keep us safe from perceived danger. Recognizing these mechanisms is the first step to reclaiming control. Now that we've explored why we sabotage ourselves, fear, identity conflict, emotional payoffs, early conditioning, let's look under the hood at the biology behind it. Because self-sabotage isn't just psychological, it's neurological, chemical, hardwired in ways that were once designed to protect us, but now can keep us stuck. At the center of this is dopamine, the brain's primary motivational chemical. But here's the nuance. Dopamine isn't about pleasure. It's about anticipation and desire. It tells the brain, this matters, go get it. When we self-sabotage, dopamine paths play a paradoxical role. Success or progress should spike dopamine, giving us energy and motivation. But when fear, anxiety, or self-criticism dominate, the brain treats the reward as threatening. It anticipates stress, not joy. Dr. Anna Lemke, in her book Dopamine Nation, explains it well. We overconsume rewards to the point that the brain lowers baseline dopamine, making ordinary goals feel unrewarding. In plain English, your brain hijacks your excitement and convinces you that staying safe feels better than moving forward. Another critical piece comes from habit neuroscience. Charles Duhigg and later neuroscientists describe a simple loop: cue, routine, reward. When self-sabotage becomes habitual, the cue is often stress or uncertainty. The route is procrastination, overthinking, or avoidance. And the reward? Temporary relief, a hit of stress reduction. Even though long-term goals suffer, the short-term nervous system reward reinforces the behavior. Your brain doesn't know the difference between short-term survival and long-term success. It's wired to repeat what feels safe. Self-sabotage also involves a tug-of-war between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. The prefrontal cortex is the thinking, planning, self-control center. The limbic system is the primal, emotional, and reactive. When you're on the edge of change, the limbic system perceives risk and overrides your rational planning. You know you should act, but your body screams stay put. Human lab research highlights this beautifully. The brain prioritizes avoiding loss over acquiring gain. Anxiety and avoidance can therefore override conscious intention. So even when you intellectually understand your next step is safe, maybe even exciting, your nervous system can still resist. The good news? Your brain is plastic. It can learn new patterns. Repeatedly practicing awareness and deliberate action strengthens the prefrontal cortex. It weakens the automatic stay safe response. Over time, self-sabotage loses its grip. And as Aristotle once noted, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Science now confirms this in neural terms. Consistent small wins rewire the circuits that once held you back. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is another key player. When the brain detects a potential threat, whether it's a social risk, a career move, or a creative exposure, cortisol spikes. Physiologically, your body is ready to flee or freeze. Heart rate increases, focus narrows, motivation feels blocked. Even positive stress, like excitement, can trigger the same system. Your brain can't distinguish between this is new and good and this is new and dangerous. This is why growth feels scary, even when you consciously want it. Here's where it gets really interesting. Individual differences in dopamine regulation, limbic reactivity, and prefrontal control explain why some people repeatedly self-sabotage while others push through fear. Some brains are wired to overestimate threat, some under-respond to reward. Some rely heavily on short-term relief, but the pattern is learnable. Even if your nervous system is sensitive, you can build resilience, create reward cues, and train your prefrontal cortex to override automatic avoidance. Here's where Stoicism intersects with neuroscience. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." From a neurological perspective, he's right. Your brain can be trained to recognize that perceived threat is often harmless. The obstacle isn't always external, it's internal wiring. And when we understand the biology, fear loses some of its mystique. It becomes something we can respond to, not react to. So what can you do with this knowledge? Observe without judgment. Recognize the cues, routines, and rewarding your self-sabotaging patterns. Small, deliberate action. Tiny steps activate dopamine reward circuits without overwhelming the limbic system. Reframe stress as growth. Remind your brain, new experiences are opportunities, not threats. Leverage repetition. Consistent practice rewires your neural pathways. You literally create a new safe zone for success. Integrate philosophy. Use Stoic reflection to strengthen prefrontal control over emotional impulses. Ask yourself, is this fear a signal or just biology misfiring? The neuroscience of self-sabotage shows us something profound. It isn't laziness. It isn't weakness. It's biology. Brain is doing its job, protecting you from perceived danger. But modern life has made that wiring outdated. By understanding how dopamine, stress hormones, habit loops, and brain structures interact, we gain the leverage to act consciously. We can outsmart our old wiring. So we've talked about why we sabotage ourselves and what's happening in the brain when we do. Now let's take a step back and look at the wisdom of those who came before us, the philosophers, the thinkers, the Stoics, who were essentially exploring the same struggles we face today, long before neuroscience existed. Because here's the thing, the mind hasn't changed that much in 2,000 years. The same internal battles that produce procrastination, fear, and hesitation are what Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus wrote about. They just use different words. Stoicism teaches that the obstacle to action is often internal, not external. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." The challenge of self-sabotage is the perfect example. The obstacle isn't the job you haven't started or the promotion you're hesitant to accept. It's the fear, doubt, and old conditioning within you. And Stoicism teaches us that by training the mind, you can turn obstacles into opportunities. Seneca had a similar insight. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. So much of self-sabotage is anticipation. We project danger, failure, and embarrassment into the future long before it happens. And then we act to avoid that imagined outcome, even if it's unlikely. From a neurological perspective, we now understand this as the brain responding to a perceived threat, not actual threat. The Stoics just noticed it with clarity and wrote about it in a way we can still apply today. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not a master of himself." Self-sabotage is fundamentally a struggle for mastery. It's the part of us that wants to grow versus the part that's clinging for comfort. Philosophy reminds us that real freedom comes from understanding that inner resistance, not from eliminating it. Nietzsche, too, recognized this tension. The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. He's describing the social and psychological friction that comes from pursuing potential. Self-sabotage often emerges when we unconsciously align with the smaller, safer identity rather than one capable of flying. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." This is deeply relevant to self-sabotage. Many of our automatic patterns persist because we believe the world outside is the problem. The Stoics and Frankl both teach that real change comes from transforming our internal response. Self-sabotage, then, is an invitation to introspection. What part of me is resisting life? What old belief or fear is holding me back? How do you apply this wisdom today? Observe your thoughts like a Stoic. When you notice hesitation or self-criticism, label it. This is fear talking. Observation without judgment reduces its power. Separate what you can control from what you cannot. You can't control every outcome, but you can control your actions, your habits, and your response to fear. Use obstacles as teachers. Every act of procrastination or hesitation as data. Ask, what am I afraid of? What is this teaching me? Daily reflection. Seneca practiced nightly reflection, reviewing actions and intentions. This can help you spot self-sabotaging patterns before they take hold. Even in our modern, high-tech world, the same internal struggles exist. Technology, social media, and endless distraction amplify them. But the solution isn't more apps or tools, it's awareness, self-mastery, and philosophy applied to action. Stoicism reminds us resistance is part of the journey, fear is a signal, not a verdict. Self-sabotage is not a failing, it's an invitation to understand yourself more deeply. Once we understand the philosophy, the next question is, how do we act? How do we turn understanding into behaviour change? That's what we'll cover in the next segment. So far, we've explored what self-sabotage is, why we do it, what's happening in the brain. Now comes the part everyone's waiting for, how to stop doing it. Breaking the cycle isn't about forcing yourself to be perfect or simply powering through. It's about understanding, awareness, and small deliberate action. So let's walk through it. Number 1, notice the patterns. The first step is simple, but often overlooked, and that's awareness. Start paying attention to when and how you self-sabotage. When do you procrastinate? When do you overthink? When do you talk yourself out of opportunities? Write it down, track it, map the cues, the routines, and the short-term rewards your brain is getting from each act of self-sabotage. This is critical because self-sabotage is usually unconscious. You can't change what you don't see. As Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. The moment you name the pattern, you've already created space to respond differently. Number 2, name the inner critic. Most self-sabotage originates in the inner voice of doubt or fear. Give it a name, call it the critic or the guardian. When you notice it speaking, pause. Recognize it's trying to protect you. Acknowledge it without obeying it. This simple step separates thought from action. It's a Stoic approach. Observe your mind without letting it dictate your behavior. Number 3, start small. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking they need massive action to overcome self-sabotage. The brain resists sudden change. It likes comfort. It likes habit. Instead, focus on tiny, manageable steps. Send the first email. Write the first paragraph. Commit to 5 minutes of your project. Tiny wins rewire your brain. They give your nervous system proof that success doesn't have to be threatening. As James Clear says, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Small action builds momentum, which gradually shifts your internal upper limit. Number 4, reframe discomfort. Self-sabotage thrives on fear disguised as discomfort. Anxiety before a presentation, that's excitement and readiness. Hesitation before a creative project, that's growth signaling you're moving beyond your comfort zone. Use this discomfort as a compass. It shows you where the growth lies, not where failure is. Number 5, build systems, not willpower. Willpower is limited, motivation fluctuates. The antidote is systems. Your environments, routines, and habits can support the action you want to take. Schedule your tasks at times you have high energy. Reduce friction for productive behavior. Use reminders or triggers that reinforce desired action. Neuroscience confirms this. Repeated cues or small action equals rewiring of neural circuits. Over time, actions become the default and the sabotage loses power. Number 6, practice self-compassion. Self-sabotage often triggers guilt and shame, and guilt fuels more sabotage. Instead, practice self-compassion. Treat mistakes as data, not failures. Forgive yourself quickly and get back to action. As Viktor Frankl said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Mistakes are part of learning. Awareness plus correction is key. Number 7, philosophical anchoring. Integrate philosophy with practice. Reflect daily. What fear tried to hold me back today? Ask, what is within my control and what is not? See obstacles as teachers, not punishers. Stoicism isn't theoretical. It's a practical toolkit for the self-aware navigator of life. Number 8, real-life examples. Consider the person who procrastinates on publishing their book. Step 1, track the moment of delay. Step 2, name the inner critic. The guardian says I'm not ready. Step 3, start small. Write 200 words today. Step 4, reframe the discomfort. Excitement disguises fear. Step 5, build a daily writing habit, even 10 minutes. Step 6, show self-compassion for missed days. Over time, these deliberate actions override the old sabotage patterns. And then number 9, the takeaway. Breaking the cycle isn't instant, it's cumulative. Awareness plus small action plus philosophical reflection gradually rewires the brain, calms the nervous system, and transforms habit. Self-sabotage is not your enemy, it's a signal. It shows where your growth edge lies. Once you see it as a teacher, not a tyrant, the path forward becomes clearer. Coming up in the next segment, we'll bring all these insights together, synthesize psychology, neuroscience, and philosophy, and leave you with actionable takeaways for lasting change. We've covered a lot today. We started with what self-sabotage is, why it quietly undermines us, and how fear and comfort interact. We explored why we do it, from identity conflict to emotional payoffs and early conditioning. We dove into the neuroscience, understanding dopamine, habit loops, stress hormones, and brain wiring. We've examined philosophical roots, learned from the Stoics, Nietzsche, and Frankl, and we explored practical strategies to break the cycle awareness, small action, self-compassion, and system building. Now, let's take a step back and see the bigger picture. Self-sabotage as a teacher, the first thing I want you to realize is this. Self-sabotage isn't a flaw, it's a signal. It shows you exactly where the growth is uncomfortable. It highlights the edges of your comfort zone, the place your nervous system is scared to go. And paradoxically, those are the very areas that hold your potential. Self-sabotage is not the enemy, it's the doorway. We've seen how modern neuroscience explains the mechanics. Dopamine, limbic reactivity, cortisol spikes. But understanding the brain is only half the story. Philosophy teaches us the ethics of action, awareness, choice, and reflection. The Stoics remind us that while we cannot always control the outcomes, we can control our response, and that's freedom. Science tells us how our patterns form. Philosophy tells us why we can change them. Together, they give us both clarity and agency. So how do you put it all together in your life? Awareness. Track your self-sabotage triggers and patterns. Observation without judgment. Name the inner critic. See it as a protective mechanism. Small, consistent action. Tiny steps. Rewire your brain and expand your comfort zone. Reframe discomfort. Recognize fear as a signal for growth. Self-compassion. Mistakes are feedback, not proof of inadequacy. Philosophical reflection. Ask what is within your control and what is not. Systems over willpower. Habits and routines support long-term change. Each of these steps, repeated over time, gradually dismantles the unconscious mechanisms that keep you stuck. And the emotional takeaway. I want you to sit with this for a moment. Every act of self-sabotage was once an attempt to protect you. The brain doesn't know that you're safe, that you're capable, or that the world can handle your success. It reacts in the only way it knows how. Now that you understand it, you have a choice. You can meet fear with curiosity instead of compliance. You can transform hesitation into deliberate action. You can turn the very impulses that held you back into signals that guide you forward. So, as we end this episode, remember, your fear, your hesitation, your procrastination, they are not enemies. They are teachers, markers, and guides. Awareness, small action, and reflection are the tools to turn these signals into growth. The question isn't whether you'll face resistance. You will. The question is whether you'll see it, understand it, and act anyway. Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That is what overcoming self-sabotage is really about. Creating that space, observing the patterns, choosing to act in alignment with your potential. Thank you for joining me in this deep dive. Remember, this journey isn't about perfection. It's about understanding yourself, learning your mind, and gradually reclaiming the freedom to act. If this episode resonated, take one small step today. Do the thing you've been avoiding. Start the project. Send the message. Write the paragraph. The cycle doesn't break in a moment. It breaks in repeated, deliberate acts of awareness and action. Until next time, this is the Big Lab Podcast, reminding you that growth lives on the edge of discomfort, and the patterns that hold you back can become the new road forward.